Today's session is going to start off with the poem, the so-called Hebrew verb, go into something about the verbs, and then go into the conjugation of what's called the present tense, so-called, of a regular verb in Hebrew. But before we do that, I noticed that Edna Kaufman has a tendency of having expressions before the text, before the lesson actually begins. And I'm looking at her 3 words of expressions for this unit that deals with verbs. And the words I notice are babayit, habaita, and boker tov. Let me just write down what she writes and make an explanation here and there. The word bayit, we already have seen that word before. The word bayit is the word for house, and that's the absolute state of the noun. If you add the definite article, you have habayit. That's the definite state of the noun, habayit, with the patach and the hey being closed by the digesh chazak in the letter that follows, if the letter that follows is able to have a doubling of that letter. And then finally, there is the so-called construct, which means house of beit. I'm looking at her expression at home. That's her English for the Hebrew babayit. Watch now what I'm about to say. I'm looking at the word habayit. Habayit means the house or the home. The letter bet added to the word habayit will give us the word in the house, habayit. Habayit by itself is the house. The bet comes along. Normal pointer with the bet is with a shvana, but we have a rule with the bakal letters. If they're added to a noun, it has a definite article in it, it strikes out the definite article, takes over the vowel, and babayit literally means in the house or in the home. And it has that THE to it. But for Edna Coffin, she translates babayit as at home. Could that mean at a home? Or does it mean definitely at the definite article at the home? And I guess my point is, if we can have the word bayit meaning house or home, and add the bet to it, mivayit means at home as well. Mivayit, at home. So what is the difference? At the home is a specific bayit, at a specific house. At home, mivayit by itself means at any home. It's an indefinite article that's being used here. The word bayit, that is, the bet comes along, and you have mivayit. This one observation dealing with English translation and dealing with the Hebrew. Then you have the phrase habaita. The phrase habaita. This is a phrase that's found with a number of words where a word ends with a kamatse, and the kamatse is not a sign of the feminine gender. Until now, that's what we've been saying. If you see a word ending with a kamatse, if you don't know differently, assume the word is a feminine word in the singular. But if I take a look at the word habaita, this word habaita is really a phrase, habaita. The kamatse is the sign of the word towards, Toward, or DS if you wish, toward or towards. So habaita is the question like this: Eifo or la'anatalech, where are you going? Ani holech habaita, I'm going to the home. I'm going homeward. I can say ani holech labayit, I'm going to the house. Ani holech levayit, I'm going to a home. Or I'm going homeward. Ani holech habaita. And you have phrases like that. The word Jerusalem, going to Jerusalem. Yerushalayim, Yerushalayma. Tel Aviv, going to Tel Aviv. Hey Daroma, going to Daron, going to the south. Tzafona, going to the north. So the kamatse added to a word is, what you have to notice, knowledge obviously, is the word towards, W-A-R-D or T-O-W-A-R-D. So I noticed that with the word habaita, and she translates habaita towards the home. And then finally she ends with the phrase boker tov, and with her vocalized Hebrew, she correctly writes boker with a media cholam and shows the accent over the first syllable, boker. Why so? Because the media cholam is always accented when it occurs in a word. Okay, we now have, as we move over to the so-called grammar, and the grammar is a number of pages where she goes into the verbs, general introduction, etc. What I'm going to do is basically go into some of these phrases. She has the word shorish, she has the word binyan, translates as conjugation pattern, and she has the word gizra, which is the classification or the family to which a verb belongs to. So let's begin with the three words. The word shorish, every word of Hebrew, every noun, every verb, you can reduce it to its root. The root, the R-O-O-T of a word. That's called the shorish. The shorish. And notice how I'm spelling that word shorish. I have a marker that basically represents the media cholam. The media cholam, and also not the sin letter, but the shin letter, which should have a marker to the right. We normally don't show the shin because it's that common. The root of the word, the shorish. Every verb of Hebrew, when you reduce it to its basic form, should show its root. Why so? Because the root will identify which family it belongs to. The family is called a gizra. We know the word family for mishpacha. Mishpacha is a family when you're talking in regular terms. Shema mishpacha, for example, what is your family name, etc., etc. But when you're talking about the situation of classification of Hebrew verbs and which gizra or which family they belong to, as far as Enda goes, she probably uses another translation and she has the word classification. So classification is your academic grammatical term, if you want. I simply call it a gizra, the family of verbs that verb that you're dealing with belongs to. So, for example, you have verbs which have the shorish lamed mem daled, which have the shorish shin mem resh, which have the shorish samech gimel resh. What all three of these verbs have in common is they belong to the same gizra. They belong to the same conjugational pattern. And what goes for lomed, this verb here, goes for shomer, goes for soger. I could take one of the many examples of shlemim, as they're called, the family, shlemim family, and basically represents all verbs in that family. Now, if the verb I'm playing with has a middle letter yud, and so the first and last letter will put an X, but what gives the gizra away is that the root shows us that the middle letter is a yud, or the middle letter is a vav, or the last letter is a hey, or the last letter is an ayin, and on and on and on. This is what gives away the family that these particular verbs belong to. So any verb that has a lamed, so it's that phrase, the last letter ayin will follow this pattern. Last letter hey follows this pattern. Last letter aleph follows that pattern. Middle letter vav follows this pattern. Middle letter yud follows this pattern. That's where you have to know the root, and that's where the word classification or family of the verbs that the root belongs to. And then finally, we have the conjugational pattern. Hebrew has 7 conjugational patterns. The pattern that we'll be dealing with is the so-called binyan kal. It's called the binyan. First of all, the pattern is called in Hebrew a binyan. That word binyan is also the Hebrew word for building. The root of the word binyan are the letters bet nun hey. Watch what I'm going to do now. Bet nun hey is the shorish. Bet nun hey is also the shorish of a verb, a lamed hey verb. So any verb that has last letter hey, irrespective of the last first 2 letters, let's assume, which are not laryngals, will follow the lamed hey conjugation. That's what it's called. Third root letter hey. And where does lamed come in? That will show you soon. But from the word to build, you get the word conjugational pattern. A pattern is the system of how that verb is built to express the past tense, the infinitive, the future, the command, whatever. And the basic binyan is known as the binyan kal. The word kal means light or easy. It also is the word that means basic. So one word has multiple meanings depending on how that word is used in a sense or in a context. But binyan kal is a free terminology. The actual terminology will be pa'al, and the vocalization of pa'al is the third person masculine singular past tense of the given verb as you conjugate it in the past third person masculine singular. Why is the vocalization of the third person masculine singular? Because all the other persons, the first, the second, the third person feminine, first, second, third in the plural, male or female, they all have an additional letter, a pronominal suffix for the past tense and a prefix letter for the future, except that third person in the past tense only, will not have an additional feature. So it shows the root by itself and only by itself. And the vocalization of that form in the third person past tense is a kamatsu and so we call it the pa'al binyan. And then there's 7 others attached to the pa'al. There's one called the nifal. And again, the vocalization I give to it is the vocalization of the given verb in the past tense, third person masculine singular. Notice I'll have the shoresh, the pei and lamed, and then I have an additional feature, the nun, representing the nifal conjugation. And the nifal expresses certain types of expressions, such as a passivity of the verb, such as a reflexive of the word, such as reciprocal, whatever it may be. Then you have a form called the PL and the PUO, the HIFIO and the HUFAL, and eventually you have the HITBIO. There are 7 forms that Edna mentions. And each one of the forms has the active part and the passive. So the PAL has the NIFAL. And then you have group number 2, the PL and the PUO. And then you have group number 3, the HIFIO and the HUFAL or the HOFAL. And then you have group number 7 called the HITPAL, which stands by itself. The HITPAL are verbs which are reflexive. I wash myself. I comb myself. This type of thing is reflexive action. What can be reciprocal as well? So, for example, when you say to someone, I'll see you again, the phrase is the hitra'ot. It's the infinitive, the hitba'el, but it's you and someone else. It's reciprocal action, which is a common way of saying goodbye, the hitra'ot, to see one another. Or the verb lahitpalel, the verb to pray. The verb to pray in Hebrew is conjugated not in a regular conjugation or an emphatic conjugation or reflexive conjugation, or maybe it is. It's conjugated in the reflexive one, the hitba'el. So when you pray, what does that imply? You're praying to whom? You're praying to Hashem, so you might say it's reciprocal. Or you're praying and praying and praying, but prayers mean nothing unless they are directed to you. You are the subject of a prayer. Oh, you make sure it's given to another, such as friend or God or government, but it actually reflects your inner intention if you're serious about what prayer is. That's how you can analyze why certain verbs are conjugated in a certain type of conjugation. Take the verb to study. It conjugates in the binyankal or the pa'al form. And the Hebrew word to teach is the same 3 letters of the word to study, but it's conjugated in the pio. And the pio conjugation is causative action, causing one to study. That's what teaching is. Or it can also be emphatic action. So one studies, it's less emphatic action compared to when one teaches. When one teaches, there's more emphasis, there's more seriousness in the subject matter. It's understandable. A student is just beginning, no matter how much of a student you are. The teacher's responsibility is to cause you to study, to get you into being a Talmid Chacham, a student of wisdom. It doesn't take a day, it takes a lifetime. Okay, with that said, this is what Mrs. Kaffa talks about. She uses the term radicals. Radicals is the term for the letters that make up the root. We use simply the word shoresh, root letters, etc. And then she goes into what's called the Benoni, the so-called present tense, which I'm going to go into right now, as that is the verb that's used. But before we do any of that, where do we get the names of these patterns, the binyanim? The Gezra, again, is the classification of the family. The Shoresh is the root, and the conjugational pattern is called the binyan. The very names themselves. I mentioned a number of times the vocalization of that particular binyan is the third person masculine singular. And now the words pa'al and nifal and hifil, all these terms are a device. They come from the Hebrew word poal. Poal is the Hebrew word for verb, verb. And playing upon the word poal, which has three letters to it, is a legitimate word in Hebrew, we're able to use these three letters as a device. The binyan pa'al is the regular conjugation. The binyan nifal is the more passive conjugation. Let's argue. And then the word pl is the emphatic conjugation or causative. And pual is the reflexive of what a po is, a pual. And then you have the hifil, which is causative action. Notice how I pointed. That hey there, that hifil, this is the vocalization of the verb third person masculine singular. Give me the verb, I substitute it in place of, or I replace the pei and lamed, and I have the verb there. And then the passive of the hifil is called the hufal, or it's sometimes pointed with a short kamatz, the hufal. And then finally, you have the seventh conjugation pattern called the hitpa'el. The hitpa'el is identified by the prefix, the hit, the hey, the short chirik, and the shvanach underneath the tav. Hitpa'el. Again, not all verbs go into each one of these binyanim. In fact, it's rare to find a given verb that will be conjugated in all seven binyanim. If you find one, it's rare. It's not that common. Okay, with that said, I think we can now go into the following. The Hebrew understanding of a verbal tense. There's a past tense where action has been done and completed. There's a future where action has not yet been done. There is a command tense, commanding to do the action. There is the infinitive. The infinitive in English normally is introduced by the word to before the verb. And as you know, in English, the infinitive is without any tense. You can use a verb in the past and the infinitive qualifies it, or the present or the future. So I want to run, I wanted to run, I shall want to run. In all three tenses, taking English, past, present, and future, an infinitive stays the same. Furthermore, the infinitive is tenseless. Well, that we already mentioned. The infinitive is genderless. It's used the same word to modify male, female, and number, singular or plural. Hebrew is different. The infinitive remains the same for what I said in English. The only thing is the Hebrew, so to speak, doesn't have a present tense. It uses what sounds like a present, and that's how we treat the Hebrew. If I want to translate Hebrew to English, or English to Hebrew, for example, I want to learn. Well, a verb seems to be the present tense. I want, ani rotzeh. But a Hebrew will use a word that sounds like the word want. But the actual verb form want is really not there. And the Hebrew has a term for that. The so-called present tense is called the Benoni. The Benoni, the word means in between. The word means dangling. Benoni. So let's get these words now. In the Hebrew language, avar is the word for past tense, that which has been passed over. Atid is the word for the future. And then Benoni. Benoni means in between. How come? How come there's no solid word for the present? Because Hebrew doesn't really have, as in European languages have, a so-called present. The so-called present dangles between that which was and that which will be. And a good example will be this word. If I write Kuf Resh Aleph on the board, the Shoresh is the pay is Kuf Resh Aleph. Using now terms of verbal understanding. The Pei HaPoel. Again, notice what we're doing. We write out the word Poel. I then say Pei Ayin Lamed. Pei HaPoel means first letter. Ayin HaPoel is second letter. Lamed HaPoel is third letter. The Pei HaPoel of this verb, which means to read, is a Kuf. The Ayin HaPoel is a Resh. The Lamed HaPoel is an Aleph. As you get into Hebrew, you'll discover there is a Gizra. There is a family of verbs known as the Lamed Aleph verbs. Which means if a verb, irrespective of the first two letters, has an Aleph at the end, it has a special twist to it in its conjugation. And so I look at this word, and I look for the so-called present tense. And Hebrew present tense, let's use that term now, are four forms. And that's what indicates it's not really a verb. The four forms are masculine, singular, masculine, plural, feminine, singular, feminine, plural. You don't have I, you, he, she. The fact that there are four forms sounds like and is the same as a substantive known as a noun. Nouns are four forms. I now write my phrase ani kore. Ani is I. The word kore, I read. But that word ani kore is also I am a reader. That same word that can be read in English as a so-called verb in the present tense is now seen by Professor Abe Garber as a noun. I am a reader. And to make a person a reader, obviously, it's the action of reading. And so you can see how it's flip-flop between a verb understanding, anikore, and a noun. The example I always use is that word shomer. Shomer is a guardian. Shomer is a watchman. I say I need shomer, I am a watchman, or I can also mean by it, I am watching. Depends on the rest of the sentence. I need shomer et hayeled. I am a watchman. Well, the sentence is incomplete. If I have et hayeled, then the word shomer seems to be a verbal form. I am watching the child. If I say I need shomer im hayeled, it can be translated, I am watching with the child, or I am a watchman with the child. So the word shomer has the noun sense, watching, watchman, and the verbal sense, watching. So you can use it as a verb, you might say, but the actual essence is that of a noun. And there are many other examples. And if there aren't any examples, so be it. You want to look at it as a verb, so be it. For example, if I take a lamed hey verb, a lamed hey verb, which is very common, is resh saliheh. And again, watch what we now do. You make sure you have your root letters down. You go through the Pei HaPoel is a resh, Ayin HaPoel is a tzadi, Lamed HaPoel is a hey. Hebrew has a gizra called the lamed hey verbs, where the hey is going to play a role, dropping out in the infinitive, for example, whatever, but it's a lamed hey. You follow the lamed hey conjugation. The present tense is rotzeh. And just look at the vocalization. Ani rotzeh, masculine singular. And the word kore, ani kore. One has a tseri under the Ayin HaPoel, one has a sigil under the Ayin HaPoel. It's because they belong to different families. Rotse, I want. I don't hear a noun there. Unless you want to say ani rotse, I am a wanting one. So I'm not denying the fact that you have a verbal translation that sounds like a present tense, but the essence of the so-called Benoni is more of substance rather than verbal action. Okay, Edna goes into her way of explaining the so-called present tense, and she goes into a deep discussion as well. And I think we basically have covered what's necessary, and now let's take a look at the actual text itself. As I move on now, we went over pages 60 and 61. And now I'm taking a look at page 62, where you have the so-called pa'al conjugation of regular verbs. If you notice what Edna does, if you have a text in front of you, she has the binyan. The binyan is the conjugational pattern, closer to pa'al. She has the gizra, what verbal family does the verb belong to, and she has the shorish. That's what you need to do. You get the shorish first, and that shorish will tell you what gizra it belongs to. And then you'll be able, when told what gizra to conjugate, and that's how it's done. Okay, the so-called first verb is called the regular verbs. The regular verbs are known in Hebrew as the shlemim. We always begin a lesson with verbs with the first example of the family known as the shlemim. The shlemim is your paradigm, and all the other families will look similar, but they also will differ because they are of a different family. The shlemim verbs means that the three letters stay in place, whereas the other families, something affects one of the letters, which gives us the name of that kinyan, of that gizra, I should say. The word shlemim. We've seen this word before. The shorish of shlemim is shin, lamed, mem. Any word that has these three root letters as a shorish implies totality or completeness. You know it as peace, that type of thing. As far as syllabication goes, don't forget to do these exercises. Constant shin, shwan 100, the lamed has a tsere, shle is the first syllable. Second syllable is mem, chirik, long chirik, followed by a mem. CVC, long vowel, close syllable, is accented. And the shlemim example she gives us is the verb to study, and also, which is just that word. Yes, it's just that verb. Okay, I'm looking at the text here. You'll notice she has four forms. Lo made is masculine singular, lo medet feminine singular, lo medim, and lo medot. And notice the subject she has aniatahu, aniati, subject pronouns masculine singular, feminine singular, and the plural forms anachnu tenhem and anachnu tenhen. One comment made by me right now. That word, and this is what you follow. This is how you start. You make sure you identify the root. You make sure you get the Yizra down, and then know what conjugational pattern you're using as the Binyan Pa'al. Gets its name from the vocalization of the third person masculine singular in the past tense. The word is lomed. If you want, you could do something like this. An O and a Tsiri. It's probably better to use letters. It's easier to recognize. So lomed is masculine singular. The feminine singular, she gives us lomedet. There's also a second form. It is not uncommon to find lomeda. There are two forms for the feminine singular in the so-called present tense. One ends with the sigal tav, and one ends with the kamotse. And don't forget your accent. Lomedet, the fourth sigal is open syllable, and therefore irregular short vowel must be accented. And the way in which you pronounce the word lomda, you don't say lomda. This is a regular open syllable, CV, and the second syllable is a constant mem with a shvana, the dalit, the kamatz under it, and then the hey is the last letter, is a vowel marker you put in brackets, lomida. Is there either or for lomeda and lomda? Yes, but I suspect many Israelis say lomeda. In literary Hebrew, it's not uncommon to find lomeda. And the plural forms are lomedim and lomedot. And then she gives us exercises.
Hi there. We have someone with a reservation for this room.
I'm sorry?
We have someone with a
Apparently, there's not a rented room. There's someone else who has to come into this room right now. I have no say about this, and Baruch, who's in charge, is not to be found at this moment. And everybody agrees, continue, Professor, with your Hebrew. See how significant Hebrew can be? Or maybe it's because I'm an old man, I'm a zakein. I can hardly walk, I can hardly talk, I can hardly this, I can hardly that. And everybody looks at me as if some kind of, I don't know, messianic figure in the skies or something. Not really. It's just a way of being a little humorous when different statements are said. Back to our Hebrew before we get kicked out of here officially with the police of Valley College coming and escorting Zev Garber. They already know you don't escort Zev Garber. Zev Garber will escort them out. At least it was the day back in the day. Anyway, back to our Hebrew. I'm going to now sit down for the exercises, then we'll get up again. And if the class gets interrupted, it's again a question of another group coming in to meet in this particular group, in this particular room. Okay, I'm looking now at page 62, and the examples are cited. Root lomedet anglit, as you see on vocalized Hebrew. Root is feminine singular, so the form is lomedet. Then you have Uri that follows. Uri, we're assuming is male. Uri lomed, Yerushalayim. Why not say Uri lomedet? Well, Hebrew still maintains a gender distinction. So root is lomedet, Uri is lomed. The word haim is they, haim lomedim lavod. And here's a good example of the infinitive. They are studying la'avod, not lamed there, to, and the word is la'avod. We don't know how to say the infinitive yet. We don't know the pei ayin verb. The verb la'avod does not belong to a shlemim. Its origin, or the first letter, is an ayin. And when you have Hebrew verbs where laryngeal letters are found any place in the verb, as the pei paul, ayin paul, lam paul, that is how you identify that family. Ayin bet dalid, the word to work, the noun eved, a servant or slave, is a pei ayin verb. First root letter affects its conjugation. And we'll see that later. The hatapatak in the infinitive is the reason why I'm saying the ayin affects the conjugation. Whereas the regular shlemim verb in the infinitive does not have a hatapatak under the pei paul in the infinitive. It has a shrana. And since the original letters cannot take shranas, they replace them with one chatafim. That's how you explain a verbal family. The verbal family can be affected by laryngeal letters. In any case, aim lumdim, they are studying or they study, and then the completion of what they're studying is the word, the infinitive, to work, lavod. Okay, the word haim itself normally is masculine, plural, but that masculine plural form is also a mixed plural. It can be male and female together. You'll use the masculine form. All right, I continue on the next page, 63. I read the form, and letter mem is for moreh, for teacher, and letter tav is talmid, student. Ani lomed irit, the student repeats, Ani lomed irit. Then you have fill-ins. Anachnu lomdim irit. That word anachnu is both male or female. Anachta could be strictly all women, all female, or anachta could be strictly all male, or anachta could be a mixture of male and female. And notice the form is lomdim. If the anachta was feminine only, then I suspect the verb will give it away. It will be lomdot. But lomdim could be a mixture, male-female, or strictly male. Atem lomedim irit. The word atem can only be you, Y-O-U, in the plural. How do I know that? I don't have atem lomed. I have lomdim. How do I know that? The Hebrew gives it away. English, you can either be singular, the word you by itself, or plural, male or female. See what happens? Every language will basically reveal another twist to the word. As far as Hebrew is concerned, we have the plural if it's a plural word, atem lomdim. As far as English goes, you study, you are studying. The you there can be singular or plural as far as English goes. It doesn't show up in the sentence. Hebrew, it does. The verb will reveal whether the word you is singular or plural. And then when you see the Hebrew, atem is not you, as you is written in Hebrew, for a singular form, which is ata or at. So every language has its challenge and also has its way of dealing with confusion. Next poem, at lomedet ivrit. The at word is feminine singular, and so the form is lomedet. At lomedet ivrit. No problem there. You are studying Hebrew. Next word, Rina. To help us out, she tells us in Sobrium in parentheses that Rina is a feminine word. And so Rina is going to be feminine. It's not lomed, that's masculine. It's not lomedot, that's feminine plural. Rina is feminine singular, hence lomedet. And Hanan, the word that follows, if you don't know its gender by the sound of the name Hanan, she tells us it's Zahar, it's masculine. No question. If it's masculine, Hanan, Lomed, Ivrit. And Hain is clearly they, feminine plural. Hain Lomedot. And then you have Rina Barut, take the two together, represent the feminine plural. Rina Barut, Lomedot, Ivrit. It's not a question of Lomdim. If there was a male containment or component of the subject, Rina and root, and a male name is added, then you can go strictly masculine. That's one rule in Hebrew, it's confusing. When you deal with the plural, if there's a presence of one sperm, of one male, then all the eggs go masculine. I now look at exercise 3B12. The teacher reads Hanan Lomed Historia, and then you have the student substituting for Hanan, Rina, and Rina is feminine, based on the exercise we just did, Lomedet Historia. And then the fill-ins, Anachnu Lomdim, or it can also be Anachnu Lomdot if you want, Historia. Atem is masculine, Lomdim. Hein is feminine, Lomdot. And then you add the phrase Historia. Hastudentit is the next line, the next word. Hastudentit is feminine singular, the student. So Hastudentit Lomedet Historia. Then she gives us the name of a person, regarding which she decides to give us the gender. Shimon, Simon, Simeon, masculine. Shimon, not Lomedet, but Lomed, masculine, governs the masculine verb. And he Lomedet Historia. Haserentiot Lomdot Historia. Shimon Ve'uri Lomedim Historia. Rina V'Chana, two feminine words. The plural would therefore be feminine plural. Rina V'Chana Lomdot Historia. Again, the word is to study. And the way I'm translating that word study sounds like a verb. Study, 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 study. I'm not denying it. For English translation, the so-called Benoni can act like a verbal form. But Lomaid is a student, actually. Admittedly, we have a word, Ani Talmid, I am a student. Ani Lomaid, I'm a learning one. I learn. And so if you learn, you get the noun attributed as students. Okay, the next verb. She points out the following. The conjugation of I am bet daled in the present tense is like that of lamed ben daled. The root is combined with the pattern to form a present tense form. And then what you have is the explanation in Hebrew. But there is also a distinction. The verb lamed ben daled is a shlemim example. The next verb, I am bet daled, is not shlemim at all. Again, the shlemim, or the three verb letters that say the same, they represent the example par excellence. I am bet daled is the next verb. The minute you have a laryngeal letter, you have no more shlemim. How do you identify that family? You identify it as a pei hapoel, pei hapoel, meaning the pei, the first letter of the verb, pei hapoel, and then you tell us what it is, the ayin, the pei hapoel ayin. And the conjugation in the present tense looks like lamed. Oved looks like lamed. Oveda looks like lamedet. Ovedim looks like lomdim. Ovdot looks like lomdot. But it's in the infinitive form. It's the infinitive which he has not given to us yet. The pei hapoel for a shlemim verb in infinitive will have a shvana under the pei hapoel. The ayin letter cannot take a shvana, and as a result, replace it by one of the chatafim. Normally the chatapata. This she does not tell us. But then again, she does. She does show us the infinitive as la'avor. She does show us the infinitive of lomed as lomod. So let's just go into that for a second. The infinitive, until told otherwise, of a shlemim verb is the following. Let's just use a letter X. You then add the letter lamed to get that phrase to, T-O. The normal pointer of the lamed is with a shvana. And right away you should see a shva cluster. When you have two shva'im at the beginning of a word, they cannot be a shvana and a shvana. If this is a shvana, what's the closing underneath the lamed? The lamed doesn't have a vowel, it has a half vowel, a shvana. And so you break the shva cluster for a shlemim verb by pointing the lamed with a chirik, leave the shva underneath the pei hapoel, and then go on. And then if you want to understand slavication, I guess you'll treat this as a CVC, a chirik, and closed by a shvana, even though that chirik is artificial. So we have the word to study, lemod, add your lamed to the shva cluster. And you break it as lemod. Now take the verb I am bet daled. This is how you start. You notice there's a pei hapoel, ayin, shvana under it. That has to be broken. Well, before we even break it, we'll break it now. You have the chatapata. The lama comes along, And what do you see there? You see a Shvana Nitalamed, you see a Chata Patach Nitiayin, there's a Shval cluster. And the Bakal letters, when a Lamed is affixed to a laryngeal letter which has under the Chata, one of the Chatafim, the Lamed will take over the sound of the Chataf. And so the infinitive is La'avod. Where can you see the connection between La'avod and Lamod? You cannot. You need to know basic Hebrew grammar. And then Edna goes a step further. What if you write without vowels? You write without vowels, that Miya Cholam of Lomod is represented by a Vav. And that word La'avod, she has it vocalized, but she also has unvocalized Hebrew. And that O sound between Ayin Alam and Apoel has a Vav there. That Vav there is not a long Cholam, it's to replace the sound of the Miya Cholam when you write without vowels. So there's a lot of complication with all this. The basic thing is you start off slowly and you understand why it's a hatapata, and you understand why it's a patachanitolamid. It deals with rules of the shvana with the laryngeal letters and also with the bakal pointing, such as the lamed, before the laryngeal letters which have hatafim. All of which we did a number of times and needs to be repeated and repeated so it gets finally settled in your minds. All right, I'm taking a look at my exercises. I'm looking at the bottom, page 63. Yoram Uve Ba Universita. Ba Universita. Notice the pointing of the bet is with a kamas. Think now the English. At the university. University is universita. The university is not universita. The hey letter before laryngeal letter is not pointed with a patach, since laryngeal letter cannot be doubled, so you increase the patach to a kamatz. And the same thing is true if the word begins with a resh letter. As in the phrase, the head, harosh, underneath the hey is not a patach, the resh cannot be doubled. Four laryngeals and a resh, the hey letter definite article is pointed with a kamatz, not with a patach. And she's emphasizing that. At the university, she puts the bet letter with a kamatz under it. Why? Because bakal letters attached to a word which are definite strike out the definite article. Whatever vowels on the definite article, the bakal letter takes over. So it's ha universita, hey has a kamatz under it. At the bet comes along, strikes out the hey, and inherits the kamatz. We continue. Root ovedet basifriya. Look at how she spells basifriya. The samach letter has a dagesh chazak in it. Why so? Because the normal pointing of the definite article is a patach, hasifriya, the library. That patach is closed by dagesh chazak in the first letter, in this case the samach, the word sifriya. The bet comes along, strikes out the hey, and has basifriya, the patach, dagesh chazak, the next letter, stay in place at the library. And then sentence number 3, Haim Ovadim Velomdim, they work and study. Then we have exercises. Yonatan Oved Babank. Yonatan Oved Babank. Anachnu Ovdim Babank. We work in the bank. Anachnu Ovadim Babank. It continues Aten Ovedot Babank. Again, keep in mind, Aten is feminine plural, Ovedot Babank. Rachel Ovedet Babank. Again, Rachel is feminine singular. Ovedet is feminine singular. There's got to be agreement between the predicates, in this case the so-called verb in the present tense, with the subject. Dr. Gorin, well, what are you going to do with Dr. Gorin? Is he male or female? It makes no difference. If you want to go male, then Dr. Gorin Oved Babak. If you want to treat Dr. Gorin as a female doctor, then Dr. Gorin Ovid Babank. Who Ovid Babank. Hain Ovdot Babank. At Ovid Babank. And finally, Atem Ovdim Babank. Okay, we now go on to the next one. Well, before we go on to the next one, there's more substitution here. The Moreh says, Mar Cosby obeyed Ba Università. Mr. Cosby works Ba Università, Anita Bet is a Kamatz. Again, Università, the hey letter, definite article. It's not pointed with a patak, but with a Kamatz. The patak means the next letter can take a dagesh chazak. The original letters cannot. And so you increase the patak to a Kamatz. Mar Cosby obeyed Ba Università. The next sentence, he oved Ba Università. And now the fillers, Gauya, she indicates as a feminine singular word, Oved Ba Università. Miriam Berut, feminine plural, Ovdot Ba Sifriya. Haim, masculine plural, Ovdim Ba Sifriya. Atem, Ovdim Ba Sifriya. Who, Oved Ba Sifriya. Aten, feminine plural, second person, Ovdot Ba Sifriya. Ani, Oved Ba Sifriya, or Ani can also be feminine, Ani Oved Ba Sifriya. Okay, we now go on to the next verb. The next verb is the verb to walk. Where you see the four forms, Holech, Holechet, Holechim, Holchot. Well, the first thing you notice is the source of the verb is Hey Lamed Kaf. It's a Pei verb. And just like Oved, it looks like in its conjugation of the four forms in the Binyan Kau or Pa'al, like a regular Shlemim. What gives it away is the infinitive. The infinitive in this case is Lalechet. Lalechet. Okay, a word or two about this verb. The verb itself may appear to be a Pehe verb. Why so? A laryngeal letter is found in the first root position. But then there are also exceptions, upon exceptions, upon exceptions. So it is not an error. To say that this verb, shorish, looks like this. Remember, when you do a shorish, you don't write the final letter. You write its regular letter. It's pehe. The infinitive is la lechet. This is a unique infinitive. It certainly does not follow the ayin vav dalet, which is avod. It loses the hey completely. Do all pehe verbs lose the hey in infinitive? No. This is the exception. So in a sense, the verb is a common verb, but the infinitive is unusual. If this is given the form lechet, the lamed comes along, and one of the roots of the lamed letter, normal point is the shvana, it's pointed with a patach or chamatz katan, short chamatz or sago. If the first letter has one of the chatafim under it, and here we find that the pointing is with a chamatz. Why so? Because the tendency of bakal letters affixed to a word where the accent is the first syllable may well take on a medial chamatz. Baruch, I need to talk to you.
157 minutes?
Let me just finish this.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Okay, so lalechet is the form. So the verb to walk is a pehe verb, but it's very unusual that the pehe drops out. I'm not aware of any other pei hey verbs where the infinitive, the hey, drops out. And the form in the infinitive, lalechet. As long as we're into this, let me just do the exercise, then we'll take the break. Okay, I'm looking at the four forms, holech, holechet, holchim, holchot, follows like the shleimim, and the dugmaot that are given. And again, watch my language. If there's an unusual situation, I will call it to your attention. You have root holechet avodah. Root is feminine, so holechet. And then the word is la avodah. It could be a patach underneath the lamed, I mean to a work, or it could be to the work, so the kamatz will be underneath the lamed, replacing the definite article. Ron holech la concert. Okay, here the English gives it out, gives it away. To the. So it should be ha concert is the concert. Lama comes along, strikes out the hey, la concert. So Ron holech la concert, not le concert. And then to Hadassah, no, that would be le Hadassah. To Hadassah. Heim holechim le Hadassah. I'm looking at the next page. Ron holech le concert. Oh, here you got Ron is going to a concert. See what I did? I read the Hebrew, unvocalized. How would I know it means to a or to the? The English tells me to a, so it'll be le concert. Ron holech le concert. And then you have anachta holchim le concert. Daya is feminine singular, holechet. Ani, in this case, the feminine is being used. She says holechet, could also be holech. Le concert. Yossi Ron. Holchim, le concert. I'm filling in the word le concert here. Yossi and Ron are masculine plural. Dani holech le concert. Aten is feminine plural. Holchot. Aten holchot le concert. And then Ruth and Dalit, Adalia are two feminine names. Holachot le concert. One more exercise. Anachta holchim, to work, let's say la avodah. Ata holech la avodah. Yehuda is masculine singular, holech la avodah. Rachel is feminine, holech la avodah. Aten is feminine plural, holachot la avodah. Hapekidim could be masculine, holachim. Could be a mixture, male or female, holachim. Harofe, holech. Hu, holech. He, holechet. Atem, holechim. And finally, Rachel v'Chana, feminine plural, holachot, the concert, lavodah. Okay, we'll take a break right now. Okay. All right, we finished the verb holech, and basically call to your attention that holech is a hey verb, but the infinitive is unusual in that the hey drops out completely, and so the verb to go is lalechet. As I continue with the page reading in the coffin, the next verb she introduces,
What page are you on?
the next page that she introduces a verb
65.
on page 6, we're getting there, on page 65 is the verb to eat. So somehow the idea is to get up, to go, and now to eat. Not that she's making that type of connection. It's just that when you deal with verbs, you kind of think that way, how much more so when it's a learning experience. And so you have to amuse yourself and somehow get back into it in a proper way. Okay, let's go over that particular verb now, to eat, and let's understand what's involved in this verb. Edna Coffin uses a number of verbs. You would think that she'll focus only on the shleimim verb, but that's not what she does. She gives us the shleimim verb, the verb to study. She then goes into a pei ayim verb, the verb to work, and then she goes into the word to walk or to go, the word lalechet, and now we have a verb to eat. So far I've seen 3 pei laryngeal verbs. It's interesting. Again, when you have a poem, when you have a verb, and laryngeal letters are going to affect the conjugation. We have a pei ayin verb that she gives us, which is a verb ayin bet dalid. She gives us a pei aleph verb, which is a verb to eat. She gives us a pei hey verb, which is a verb to walk. And she gives us what a pay aleph is being introduced, the pay aleph, and the verb to study is lamed mem daled. That's your regular Shlemi verb. So we're now on the third pay apol laryngeal. And you want to notice we've had several distinctions already. The holech verb and the oved verb in the present tense look identical. Holech oved, holechet ovedet, holchem ovdim, holechot ovdot. And now the verb to eat, given the shoresh is aleph kaf lamed. Whenever you see a laryngeal letter, you identify that to be the root of the gizra, the conjugation of the classification, and that's going to show up in a few moments. In any case, the so-called present tense, aniyatahu ochel, aniyati ochelet, anachnu temhem ochlim, and anachnu tenhen ochlot. And then the infinitive form, again, you follow the example of the shlemim. The shlemim will have the shva, and then the miyacholam between the ayin and lam and apol. So the verb given in the text is limod. Then you add your lamed, you have a shva cluster, and the final form is lomod. And then with laryngeal letters, laryngeal letter cannot take a shvana, replace it by one chatafim. So in the case of ayin bet daled, it's avod, since it cannot take a shvana, lamed comes along, takes over the sound of the chataf lavod. The normal pointing of the bakal letter lamed is with a shvana until it's affixed to a word, and then if there's a cluster, you got to change the shvana and use a lamed. Now, what about the word to eat? The verb to eat, as I look at the conjugational pattern, she has the word echol. This is how you start. You have echol, you have a shva cluster, or you have a shvana, and in the case of the verb to eat, the shvana is replaced by a chatav segol. The lamed comes along, shva cluster between the shvana and the chatav segol. The lamed takes over the sound of the chatav segol. Le'echol. The verb to eat, le'echol. Segol and the lamed, chatav segol and the aleph. That's what she has here. She doesn't really go into more than that. She just gives us the form without an explanation why it's le'echol. My point is you need to know the gizra, need to know the family, the classification, and that will help you. So theoretically, any pay aleph verb will look like le'echol in the infinitive. Yes and no. I mean, I'm thinking of a verb that's a pay aleph verb, the verb to say in Hebrew, aleph mem resh. Aleph mem resh. In the present tense, omer, omeret, omrim, omrot, and in the infinitive, it has imor, replaced with a chatav segol, emor. Lamed comes along, le'emor. And in this case here, it's also possible to find lemor. That's biblical, lemor, with the aleph being a long vowel marker of a tzeri. But basically, le'emor is what I would say, looks like le'echol. Okay, as we now look at the dugmaot, the examples on the bottom of page, let me get my glasses on, the bottom of page 65. Dan ochel b'cafeteria. Again, notice how I read it. Dan ochel b'cafeteria, which translates as Dan eats in a cafeteria. My unvocalized Hebrew does not tell me that it meant to be in the cafeteria. I look at the English, and once I see at the cafeteria or in the cafeteria, then my Hebrew will change. Dan ochel b'cafeteria. Again, cafeteria, the cafeteria, ha-cafeteria, in the cafeteria, the bet comes along, strikes out the hay, takes over its vowel, ma-cafeteria. Rina ochelet, at home is babayit. It could easily be bivayit, at a home, but I guess at home implies specifically the home, so babayit. Again, it's interpretation. Hein ochlot, hein is feminine plural, and then the word for coffee house. Here you have the word bayit in the construct state, bevei cafe. Again, bayit is house. Habayit, the house or the home. Beit means house of, home of, and when you have places which have the word beit in front of it, so it's Beit Knesset, Beit Midrash, Beit Sefer, these type of words, Beit Cafe. Okay, and then at the, so it's Bab Beit Cafe. If it were at a, it would be Biveit Cafe. Next page. Done.
Just announce the pages for people's reference.
Yes, next page is page 66. Page 66. Non lo ochel b'cafeteria. Again, that word lo. Lo is used primarily with verbs. The present tense is really not a verbal conjugation. The word should be better ain. She's not considering that at all. So stay with the word lo. Lo is truly used with the verb in the past, the future, and ain is the word that should be used in the so-called present or Benoni form. Non lo ochel b'cafeteria. Non lo ochel b'cafeteria. I'm looking at the English at the. Rina lo ochelet. Now, Rina doesn't eat at home, so probably it should be babayit. Rina lo ochelet babayit. Anachnu lo ochlim at the bank, babank. I'll treat this as a definite noun. Ein lo ochlot, they do not eat beveit cafe. Or beit cafe. Depends on how you want to say it. At a cafe, or at the cafe. And back to who lo ochel, and aten lo ochlot, and ani lo ochel, or ani lo ochelet. Next paragraph. Rina ochelet babayit. Here she shows at home the babayit word. Patach is a short vowel, open syllable, accented. Hu ochel babayit. Anachnu ochlim babayit. Hein ochlot babayit. Atem is second person, masculine plural, ochlim babayit. Rina v'chana, two females, feminine plural, ochlot babayit. He ochelet babayit, and our student team, ochlim babayit. Then she goes into a new conjugation, the conjugation of lamed he verbs. Again, by now, we need to pick up terminology. Lamed he is a device. Let me repeat that device again. Whenever you see a verb, you identify the family. The family is identified by one of the three letters, or all three letters, or whatever, of the given verb that's given. The word, first of all, is poal. Poal is the Hebrew word for verb, poal. We then say the pea poal, the aina poal, the lamna poal. Peapo is the first root letter, ayin is the second root letter, and laminapo is the third root letter. We're now being introduced to a lamed he verb. Lamed he. Let's hope this pen writes now. Lamed he. Lamed he means the lamed hapoa, the third root letter, is the he. If the third root letter is the he, it has its own conjugation in the present tense and also in the infinitive. And so she gives us a number of verbs. The verb that she gives us, found on page 66, is the verb osed. What makes osed difficult is the following. Osed is not just the lamed he verb. You'll notice the lamed apo is a he, and you notice the pe apo is an ayin. So it belongs to an pe ayin lamed he conjugation, which means that the ayin is going to affect the conjugation in the past, future, infinitive, and the he is going to affect it. It's not just a lamed he, it's a pe ayin lamed he. And so we'll follow the conjugation that she gives us. The masculine singular is oseh. Again, when you see the letter sin, make sure you have the marker to the left of that marker. When you write the shin letter, you don't have to bother to write the marker to the right of the letter. Oseh is masculine singular. Osa is feminine singular. And then the plural forms are osim and osot. And one more time, Professor Garber is going to emphasize what you see here are the markers of a noun. What you see are the markers of a noun. A word ending with Kirikud mem is a masculine plural noun. A word ending with long cholam tav is a feminine plural noun. A word that ends with kamatse is a feminine singular noun. That's the so-called present tense. So there's an interchange between a noun and a verb here, if you want to see it that way. And then the infinitive. Notice the infinitive of a lamed hey verb. That hey at the end is missing. This is the infinitive. It's ayin, shvana, sin, cholam tav. The ayin cannot take a shvana in its place the chata patach. Then the lamed comes along. Normal pointing lamed, shvana. Shva cluster between the shvana of the lamed and the chata patach of the ayin. And then you transform it to la'asot. The lamed takes over the sound of the ayin, la'asot. That's what's going on here. As we now take a look at her examples. She writes it all out. She does not explain why that hey becomes the ot, except it's a lamed hey verb, but she doesn't explain why the ayin has a chatapatak under it. That's why it's because it's a preapolaryngeal ayin in this case. Okay, as I now look at the examples given on page 67, Ma Pakiro Sebabank. Again, I look at my English. In the bank.
Ba bank or be bank?
The bank. Ba. Since it says the bank, the word is bank. The bank is ha bank. The bank comes along, strikes out the hey, ba bank.
So it's a patak or kamat?
It's a pacha.
Oh, it's a patak? Underneath both beds?
That's right. The word bank, when it's written out, has a patak under it. And the reason the bank is ha bank, the hay is pointed regularly, and the bet strikes out that hay and takes over that
In the
patak.
bank.
In the bank. If it were in a bank, it would be bevank. Bevank. And people don't speak that way. They say bebank. They say bebank. They don't bother to, make the bet letter a spiral sound or a continuous sound. Okay, Ma Paquito said babank. Marina Osa Basifria. Again, I want to know if it's Basifria in a library or in the library. I check my English. I see Basifria. I go on. Matemo Simba Konoa at the movies. And then you have a comparison here. Note the differences between the Gizrat. When that word Gizrat is the smichut of the word Gizrat. Gizrat's classification of the Shlemim, she writes. So it's Gizrat, not Gizrat. Gizrat Shlemim. And the Gizrat is the classification of Lamed Hey. She compares Lomed Oseh, Lomed Osa. Again, the ad, the ad, the im, the ot is due to the lamed hey formula. Then she goes on with this. Okay, the next verbs. Resh sadi hey and shin tav hey. Look at the resh sadi hey, the shlemim, it's not a shlemim. The lamed poel is laryngeal hey. It's a lamed hey verb. Shin tav hey, the verb to drink, same situation, lamed hey. And then rotzeh and shoteh look identical to oseh. Rotzeh, rotzah, rotzim, rotzot, shoteh, shotah, shotim, shotot, back to oseh, osa, osim, osot. And the infinitives, lirtzot and lishtot. Where does the infinitive lirtzot differ from lasot? In the case of La Sot, it's not just Lamed Hey, it's Pei Ayin, and the Chata Pata have replaced the Shvana. Otherwise, the Sot and the Stot, the race letter is regular in the sense of no need to replace the Shvana. The same thing with the Stot. Okay, and then you have the four examples on the bottom of page 67. Who wrote se, who ose. He wants, if you want to say he desires, and he does, who ose. Mata rotse lamod, what do you want to study? Here you have the verb in the so-called present and the infinitive. Ani rotse lamod anglit, I want to study English. Anachnu rotzim, we want sefarim. Example number 3 on the bottom of page 67. We go on now to page 68. Here you have a series of sentences, and this should take care of this whole exercise at this point. Dan shote kafe baboker. Notice the spelling of the word boker. When you write without vowels, that vav letter comes in to give the sound of the O. But the pronunciation is baboker, not baboker, baboker. It's a miya cholam there.
Is it so? Dan shote cafe. It's not ve voker with a
Bob Boker.
the number 4. It's not spana. It's a pata under baboker. So there's the two bets. You got bet.
Yeah,
Bob
Boker.
Rest.
No, it's underneath the bed. Okay, let's write it on the board. What she has, look at the English. That will guide you. Otherwise, you're going to have either or reading. I'm looking at the English. I'm looking at her her unvocalized Hebrew.
Yeah, so it's bet. I'm looking at the note of this.
Okay,
right
just 1 minute. Without her saying anything, you cannot be sure what that word Boker, adding the vav to it. If she doesn't say at the morning, but just simply has the word, you can easily read it as bivoker in a morning, in a morning, in a morning. The morning is the following. The is a THE. Hey, patach, dagation at bet now is now a dagesh chazak, haboker. In the morning, the bet letter comes along, strikes out the hay, takes over the vowel. Baboker. So Bob Boker is in the morning. In a morning is Biv Boker.
Yeah, that was it.
And Israelis will say Biboker, Biboker, Biboker. They don't know how to say a vet letter. They're familiar with the word Boker, and that's all they say. They'll say Biboker. It's wrong. If the bet is there, then the Dagesh Kau and the bet letter of Boker should drop out. Biv Boker. And then you add that Vav letter if you're running without vowels, which can easily have the word read as boker. Boker, a present tense of bet kufresh. Bet kufresh, I should say. And bet kufresh itself deals probably with bakar, cattle. Cattle. It gets complicated when you write without vowels, that's for sure. Okay. Let me have the dictionary for a second. I want to check the word boker. Boker as a so-called present tense. Boker, boker, bokrim, bokrot. It has nothing to do with morning. Has nothing to do with to visit. That's mevaker. And I just wonder if there is a word boker. I'm working with my knowledge. And because I need to double check everything sometimes, let's just see if we have a word boker. Yep. 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 Boker. Translation, a herdsman. a herdsman. I said a cattle. Somebody who works with cattle. I guess a herdsman is a fancy schmancy English word, which means somebody who works with animals, a herdsman.
In the morning? The
That's,
boker?
yeah, well, naturally, you can connect all those words. Bet Kufresh could be Boker, Bet Kufresh could be Bakar, cattle, and then you have now the so-called noun Boker, a herdsman or a cattle worker.
Shepherd.
How's that?
Shepherd.
A shepherd, yeah, a shepherd, yeah, it's better.
Herdsman.
No. And Boker by itself looks like the verb in the present tense. Boker, Bokeret. Bokeret, I guess, is a female shepherd, a shepherdess. That's what I'm trying to get across. The verb is there in translation, but it's also at the same time a noun. A boker, boker. So a herdsman is shepherding, using now a verb. Whatever. Anyway, these questions are not raised by Edna. It's not of interest for Israeli spoken Hebrew every day. It is for me, so that's why we bring it out to your attention. Bring it to your attention. Okay, let's do a whole page now, and that should do it. I'm looking at Rancho Te Cafe Baboker. I'm reading her English, so I'm reading it as Baboker. Then Ruchota Coca-Cola, the cafeteria. Why Coca-Cola? I don't know why, except that when I was in Israel, and I need to say this as a personal note, there was no such thing as Pepsi Cola. Pepsi Cola avoided Israel in the problems when Israel came about in 1948. It's only later in Israel history did Pepsi Cola come to Israel. The drink that was there all the time, Coca-Cola. And look at how it's written, Coca with a hyphen, Coca-Cola. You can do that if the word is borrowed. Again, root shota Coca-Cola, back cafeteria, not big cafeteria, in the, so back cafeteria. Hem lo shotim cafe, they don't drink coffee, ba sifriya. And notice she vocalized the word coffee right here, cafe. Why not before? Why here? I don't know.
Vesiferia, not Basaferia, right? If they don't drink coffee, so it would be הם לא שורותים קפה וסיפריה.
Basifriya.
Also, Inda is Ba.
That's right. Sifriya by itself is library. The library, Hasifriya. The hay is not found when you write in the library because the bet strikes out that hay.
So it would be Basifria.
Basifriya. And the word for coffee, cafe.
Coupe.
Not
Cashier. That's what you thought you told me. That's
no, she writes it out correctly. Cafe, not cafe.
They're similar words.
Cafe. Okay, next paragraph. Ma Rivka Osa. What is Rivka doing? Behadasa. The hospital, last syllable, Bahadasa. Not but Hadassah. Hadassah is the name of a person. Hadassah is the hospital. And then the next line, Mahu Oseh Bahadasa. And then you fill in Ma Esther Rivka. You take the sentence that's given and now substitute the new subject. So in place of who, you put the word Esther and Rivka. Ma Esther Rivka Osot Bahadasa. Ma Rivka Veron Osim Bahadasa. Veron is masculine, so the plural will be masculine. Ma'ata Oseh Bahadasa. Ma Harofa'a, feminine singular, Osa Bahadasa. Ma Uri Vidani Osim Bahadasa. Next paragraph. Ron Rotze Lavo B'Memshala. Here you have the word lavo as the infinitive. If you're not clear in the meaning of the sentence, look at the English. It doesn't say Ron works, it says Ron to work, wants to work. Lavo, Rotze is your verb. Ron Rotze Lavo B'Memshala. Or, again, for the government or at the government, the bet is going to have a patak under it. Memshala is government, Ha-Memshala is the government. The bet comes along, strikes out the hay.
So, okay, so דן רוצה לעבוד בממשלה
La'avod.
או לעבוד?
It's an ayin. La'avod b'memshala. Correct.
with a patah.
Pa-
Patah come on.
Underneath the ayin is a chat.
Underneath the lamed for לעובד.
The lamed has a patach under it.
Okay.
Again, think through. The ayin has a shvanad. It doesn't take. It has a chata patach. Lamed is grafted onto avod. Takes on the sound of the chataf. La'avod. Gauya. Notice she writes the letter gimel. She puts a dot in the gimel. She doesn't do that all the time, but here she does. Bega careful at the beginning of a word. Explosive. And underneath the lamed, she doesn't put the shvanach underneath it. So she writes here and she doesn't write there. Galia is feminine. Rotsa lavod b'hadasa b'memshala. Sorry. Ron v'galia, plural, masculine containment. Rotzim lavod b'memshala. And then the next one is atens, feminine plural. Rotzot lavod b'memshala. Atem rotzim lavod. At rotzal lavod. Harofim is masculine plural. Rotzim lavod b'memshala. And finally, he rotzal lavod b'memshala. And then finally, the next paragraph. Rivka shota kafe. Rivka shota kafe. Anachnu shotim mira.
It's not shuta, it's shota.
Shota.
Okay.
Shintav he is a lamed he verb, like the word rotzeh, like the word boneh. Rotzeh, rotza, rotzim, rotzot. Shoteh, shota. Shotim, shotot. Anachnu shotim mira. What is it, bira?
Is it the bet or bet or bet?
It's a bet. The
Oh,
word.
that where there should be a dot in the
Yeah,
bet.
that's right. Well, she's writing unvocalized Hebrew, so you have to know that a beggar careful at the beginning of a word is the guy's call. Anyway, shotim bira, drink beer. Hein shotot, they drink tea. Uri shoteh, Coca-Cola. She vocalizes that word. Then he will be shotah. Atem is shotim. Rina Vidalia, feminine plural, shotot. Uri Vidani, masculine plural, shotim. And then finally, one more paragraph. The bottom of page 68. Ma'at rotsa latzot. What do you want to do? Ani rotsa, or it could be, no, sister says at, that's feminine. So the female is saying ani rotsa, la'lechet, to go, la universidad, to the university. Again, it's not le universidad. It says to the, so universidad, ha universidad, strike out the hey, la universidad. And then I guess you asked the same question about the next sentence. Ma uri rotse lasot. What does Uri want to do? Uri rotse lalecha lachonoa. Ma rivka v'ron. You got a plural here, but ron is masculine. Rotzim lamud. What do Rivka and Ron want to study? Hey rotzim lamud safot. Ma Esther Rivka, it's feminine plural. Rotsa or rotso. What do Esther and Rivka want? Hey rotzot avodah b'memshalah. They want work in the government. And then finally, ma ta rotzeh. What do you want? Lishtot. And the response is, ani rotzeh lishtot kafe.
Okay,
Okay, well, and right here.
We'll continue back
On
on Tuesday at page 69.
No, today is what? Today is Tuesday.
Well, let me see. I think today
Thursday.
I'd have to check on the phone.
No, today is Thursday?
I go by my calendar, so. But anyway.
No, you're right. Wait a minute. I'm good.